This is Hub City Spokes, where creators, catalysts, and leaders share their insight in Lubbock, Texas. This season, we're speaking with local businesses discussing their response to these changing times. Thanks for joining us. You guys are in for a treat today. We have Texas BBQ is the topic for today. So we've got the owners of Evie Mae's, Arnis and Mallory Robbins. Thanks for being out.
Thanks for having us.
So for those that don't know, many do in Lubbock, y'all are definitely one of the favorites. So what's the story of Evie Mae's? How did it get started?
Oh, man. If you want to go way back, I grew up in eastern New Mexico and ended up in Tucson in 2006. Going to a landscape design school. Went to work for a landscape company, started a landscape company. Mallory and I started dating, got married, operated a landscaping business for 4 years. And somewhere in that 4 years, I got into backyard barbecue, just as a hobby. It was a therapeutic outlet. The construction industry in Southern Arizona at the time was really, it was a hard industry to be in. Just cutthroat, rat race. So barbecuing on the weekend was what I looked forward to.
Real quick, he said he got into backyard barbecue. He welded a massive pit in our tiny backyard, and our neighbors thought we were insane because there's no barbecue out there. So they were like, what is this guy doing cutting into a propane tank with a torch in their backyard?
Anyways. Well, and that smoker itself was kind of a therapeutic project, just to have something to build. I always like to have something to work on. So I built this smoker, but didn't know anything about barbecue really. I had been using an electric cabinet smoker for a year and a half or so at that point and grilling on a gas grill. But wanted to explore and pursue that deeper. So built a smoker and started using it every weekend. And it's very expensive. Like we didn't, I was going to say we didn't have kids. Evie was an infant, so she wasn't eating. So I would smoke a brisket for Mallory and I, and it would be terrible. And
it would be terrible, and it would be a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean,
this massive brisket that would feed 20 people, and it's me and him.
Yeah, $50 brisket that is not very good, that she doesn't want to eat, and I want to eat strictly because I know how much money I spent on it. And I realized I need to practice, but it's too expensive to practice. So we talked to our neighbors, and for like a month, it seemed like every weekend they would just bring meat over and I would cook it for them. We had a couple of block parties, and the more I did it, the more I wanted to do it, and the more expensive it was. And I could tell that it wasn't very viable.
So when you say practice, like what are some of the factors you're having to play with?
So in the beginning, every time I'd cook a brisket, I'd take notes. It was kind of silly. I had a spreadsheet.
I thought he was out of his mind.
Well, it was like the weight of the brisket, what I seasoned it with, how long I cooked it.
But also like weather. Was it humid that day? Did it rain? But at the time I was like, this guy's lost it. Like, why is he so serious about this? But knowing what I know now, 7 years in, all of that stuff is super important when it comes to learning to cook, controlling variables and adjusting cooks based on things.
And if you don't note those variables, then you have no idea what could have led to the final product. So, I started shopping Craigslist for a food trailer, because I wanted to be able to do this, and I wanted to be able to sell my barbecue, not to start a business, but just so I could cook more.
Pay for your hobby. Yeah.
So I did some searching on Craigslist and came across the most epic, like, carny wagon. And I think the guy had it listed for like $5,200, and I went and looked at it. I hadn't talked to Mallory about it. I hadn't told anybody, because I knew everybody at this point thought it was a terrible idea. Like, it was no more than a little backyard hobby. So I called Mallory. I went and looked at the trailer. I offered the guy like $2,500. That was all I had. He took it. And I called Mallory on the drive home with this awful, tacky...
He's like, hey.
I bought a food trailer.
What did you say?
I was kind of frustrated, just because I thought, are you serious? Like, what are we going to do with this? And he immediately just got to work fixing it up and said, we're going to sell a barbecue one day a week so that we can pay for this hobby. And so side note, in the meantime, Arnis had been diagnosed with celiac disease, so he has to be strictly gluten-free. So I had to kind of relearn how to bake everything, how to cook everything without wheat flour. So making good cornbread, making good pie crusts, good dessert, so that we didn't feel like because I went gluten-free for him. So I kind of had to relearn how to do everything. So that kind of gave me an outlet to sell baked goods and pies and things. So then I was a little bit more on board, and it got more fun and it wasn't as scary. But when he pulled up with that carny wagon, I mean, it was terrifying. And our neighbors, seriously, I think they thought we lost it.
But I mean, that's kind of my MO. I mean, that's how I roll. And I know if I make my bed, I'm going to sleep in it. So I felt like I'm either going to make this work or I'm going to get out from under it and everything's going to be okay. So at the time, it didn't seem like that big of a risk. $2,500 cash was probably our life savings at the time, but I poured it into that trailer. So I got the trailer home. And one of the reasons that I wanted to buy an existing food trailer in Pima County, was the county that we lived in, was because if it was already licensed with the county, then it was really, really easy to do an ownership change. So I thought that would be the quickest route to actually set up on the side of the road. So I get this trailer home and immediately go to work remodeling it, because the clock was ticking at that point. I had this money invested in this trailer and I needed to be selling barbecue ASAP. So I think it took a week and a half after I brought that thing home, fixed it up a little bit, got it inspected, partnered with a local restaurant to be our commissary, where we would prepare all of our product. Talked to a guy who had bought a closed down
Golf
course, and he said that we could set up at the clubhouse. And so all of that just kind of came together, and we opened on a Thursday. The first time we opened on a Thursday morning, had told nobody but our neighbors, and here we are set up on the side of the road. I'd cooked all night, the sun's coming up, and like the minute that the sun came up, I started thinking, what am I doing? I have no idea. Like, I've never worked in a restaurant. Nobody has ever bought my food before. I cooked my first brisket like 6 months ago. What am I doing? And I was ready to pack up and go home. Like, it was the most terrified I've ever been in my adult life. I just felt so overwhelmed with everything all at once that I just thought I wasn't prepared for what I had decided to do there.
It's unbelievable hearing that, and just, I mean, we'll get there, but like knowing where you guys are now is just incredible.
So it's funny.
Crazy to think about.
Everything since that day, setting up the trailer in Wolfforth, opening up the restaurant in Wolfforth, nothing has come close. Like, I'm not scared of those things anymore, because that was truly the most terrifying morning of my entire existence, and nothing will ever be that scary again.
Well, and he also didn't say that morning he had a grease fire.
Oh yeah, I mean,
so the smoker,
anything that could have gone wrong went wrong. We had gone to Phoenix the weekend before for Easter and done a whole hog at one of my buddy's house. And if you've ever cooked a whole hog, like, there's so much fat there. And so we cooked it all night Saturday, ate it for Easter dinner, and then we needed to get back from Tucson. So like the smoker is still like kind of hot, and I didn't have a chance to drain it and clean it all up. So we drive home. Well, on the drive home, like all this fat is sloshing around in the bottom of the smoker. And 3 days later, I go set up to cook, and as if it wasn't stressful enough, about 2 hours into that cook process for our first day to be open, I come out of the trailer, and there's just like this nasty black column of smoke coming out the top of the smoker.
Oh my gosh.
You open the firebox and you can just see this rager like inside the smoke chamber itself. But you know, it all worked out.
So how did you guys get from there here to West Texas?
So we set up that first time in March of 2014, and we opened 1 day a week from March until about September.
Yeah. Arnis's family, see, we're from eastern New Mexico, so Lubbock is the closest city. So this is where we would come to go to the doctor, go to the dentist growing up, you know, go to the mall, all the cool big city Lubbock stuff. So his family left the farm, sold their farm, and had moved over to Lubbock. His sister lives here. All of my family still lives in eastern New Mexico. I have some family here in Lubbock. So we decided, we thought at this point we had gotten pretty serious about barbecue. Yeah. I was all in. He had gotten better and better and better. And it was fun, and we just enjoyed it. And we were like, we want nothing to do with our landscaping company anymore. I mean, that was exhausting. And I mean, not that cooking isn't exhausting, but it just sort of happened that a large company came and offered to buy our landscaping company.
Well, and kind of going back to the art, like I wanted to do landscaping because I enjoyed working with my hands and creating
something. Yeah.
But that industry there was so competitive that there was very little of that going on. It was all about just making sales.
Yeah.
So it wasn't fun anymore. Mm-hmm. And barbecue kind of took over and filled that creative void that I thought I had kind of filled with landscaping previously. Also, Evie was a baby, and we were 600 miles away from family.
Yeah, we really missed our family. And every time we would come home to visit or come home, it would be Lubbock for the holidays. And then, eastern New Mexico to visit my family. Go ahead.
What was incredible about starting there, though, was there was so little barbecue knowledge and influence that it allowed me, I mean, even the internet wasn't that great of a resource at that time. So it was really pure, like the way that I got into it. I was able to do what I wanted to do and learn from my mistakes and serve a consumer that really didn't have anything to compare it to. So that was really cool. And I appreciate that very much, because I don't think that our story could have organically evolved the way that it did if we had been in Texas, if we had been in barbecue country, and if we were just trying to mimic, the best thing out there at the time.
Yeah.
So by the time we came to Lubbock, we had been doing that for 6 months, and we couldn't set up, going back, we decided to move to Lubbock and pursue barbecue full time. Ordered a legit food trailer and
sold the carny wagon.
Sold the carny wagon.
Do you have pictures?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I've tried to find it. I've scoured the internet.
Oh, really? Yeah, I would love to have it back. Just because.
So we moved here in November, December of 2014, and Lubbock has an ordinance that does not allow mobile food vending in the city.
Yeah, they hadn't changed the ordinance yet. It was still industrial zones from certain hours to certain hours. And we were like, well, crap. We just sold our landscaping company and moved all the way across the country.
We have to start. So I called Wolford, and they were like, yeah, whatever. I mean, you can...
And where our trailer was just, it was 6 feet from the city of Wolford. So it was just blanket state of Texas, health department, county. So we sort of just got to do whatever we wanted. So we rented that storage unit, set up 5 or 6 picnic tables, and parked our wagon out front.
And our start in Wolford was a little bit like Tucson, where we didn't, I mean, at least we had some neighbors there. We didn't have a lot of friends or family.
We didn't know anybody
here. We didn't know anybody. So
parents.
We didn't even have a sign. Couldn't afford to put a logo on the trailer, so it was just the red trailer. And like an hour after we opened, Mallory hand painted just a BBQ on a piece of plywood that we found.
And put it in the ditch.
And it just kind of evolved. That was February of 2015. So from February 15 to May, things were pretty slow. We were cool with that for a little while because it gave us an opportunity to kind of figure this out. But it was really, really starting to become a stressor, the fact that it just wasn't taking off. At that point, we had some really, really loyal customers, but we were still kind of out in Wolford, and we didn't know how to go about kind of spreading the word. And in May of 15, Daniel Vaughn, the Texas Monthly barbecue editor, showed up. And he came and ate, and the next day he posted a review on his personal blog, and everything just went crazy from there.
That. So I didn't know anything. I didn't have an Instagram. We had a Evie Mae's Facebook page. We had 17 followers. 17 people in Wolford.
We had no idea. You go back and look at some of the first pictures that that we posted.
But yeah, we had the day after Daniel Vaughn from Texas Monthly posted that review, the semi truck like slams on the brakes on Marsha Sharp and like hops out and like walks across the ditch, hands me his cell phone through the food truck, and he says, "Do you follow this guy, Barbecue Snob?" And I said, "I don't know who Barbecue Snob is." And he was like, "Well, he told me if I drive by Lubbock that I need to make a detour, so I'm here to try your brisket." And I was like, "What in the world?" Wow. And so then I got a Twitter and I got an Instagram and I was like, "Oh, that's him. That's the guy that came to eat." He's, and it's crazy.
So you had no idea it was him when he showed up?
I didn't. He knew who he was.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
But it was like...
we had just watched an episode with Anthony Bourdain that he was on in Austin where Daniel Vaughn takes Anthony Bourdain through, some different Texas barbecue joints that are really well known. So I had seen him on TV, but until he said, "That's Daniel Vaughn," and I was like, "Oh my gosh, he's right here." Yeah,
because I mean, it was like I'm over here in the trailer, like I didn't see out the window. I worked over on the side, but we had been open for about 45 minutes, and we hadn't had a customer yet. So whenever he walked up, I just kind of happened to peek out, and we served him, and then he went into the storage unit, and I told Mallory, I said, "I think that's Daniel Vaughn. Like I think that." But at the same time, it wasn't the experience that you would expect, like. He's not a secretive reviewer. Like people know who he is.
Had we had a Twitter, we'd have known he was coming.
Well, yeah, he had posted that he was touring through.
We didn't know
West
anything
Texas.
about the Twitter.
But he didn't introduce himself. Mallory went in and checked on him a couple times, and then he left. And I was, like I said, I was pretty sure it was him, but I wasn't positive. And so for like the next 24 hours, I was just constantly. Checking his blog to see if he had posted anything.
That really rocket launched us, with attention and social media and news articles, and it brought people from all over to try our barbecue, which was really, really cool and really, really helped because we were seriously at the point where we were like, okay, this isn't working. We've run out of money. We need to go get real jobs.
Well, we were trying to figure out at that point how much longer it was going to be before we could move the trailer to
Lubbock. And then Lubbock did change the ordinances. Right. But at that point, we already had
once the word spread and we kind of established ourselves out there, we have never had any desire to leave that area.
Yeah, y'all have a great location right off the Sharp. Super easy to get to.
So we were super fortunate whenever we found that storage unit to rent. Which originally was going to be kind of a staging area and a place to store the trailer if we were bringing it into Lubbock. But our landlord there owned that corner where the restaurant is now. So when things really, really took off that summer, he approached us and said, "Hey, I've got this land down here and I've just been sitting on it and I haven't been able to think of the right thing to put there. And if this is something that you guys want to commit to, I will build this restaurant for y'all." Which, like, what are the odds of that happening?
Right.
That doesn't happen. So Mallory and I hired an architect and designed the space, and he built it for us. And I think it was February of 16 whenever they poured that slab, and we moved into the restaurant in April of 16. So, I mean, everything just went so fast. And we've kind of been going 1,000 miles an hour ever since.
So whenever you open that restaurant, you should think about what you're going to serve. Can you talk out like the meats that you're wanting and then the sides and desserts that you were thinking you wanted to put out?
Did we talk about that, or what are you wanting us to talk about?
Yeah. Let us know like kind of what you guys have.
So we basic Texas barbecue. So brisket, we do pork shoulders for pulled pork. We do St. Louis trimmed ribs, which now are kind of hard to find. So we're having to do full spares because of supply chain issues. We added half chickens.
We do beef ribs, which we've never had them. Like they're the dino ribs. I wanted to be like really traditional in what we were doing. I wanted to just be a barbecue joint. We didn't have a deep fryer in the kitchen. Like everything was very just traditional barbecue, Texas barbecue.
Well, and when we started, we had a couple kinds of beans, potato salad, slaw. That's pretty much it. Added cornbread and grits later, and the side menu just sort of expanded as we expanded and have new people on our team and ideas from people in the kitchen and some of our employees.
Our philosophy was, if we can do it great, then let's do it. But if we can't do it great, and if we can't do it great gluten-free, then we don't want to do it. What's the point? So that's kind of been our philosophy with everything. If we think we can do it, great, then let's do it. Otherwise, we don't need to do it.
Yeah. You definitely have. I mean, obviously the meat is phenomenal. I love the sides too. They're they're so good.
Sides and desserts. And I'm like, I guess I'll eat a bite of brisket, but I'm here for the desserts and sides.
I feel like it's a really interesting tell of a good barbecue joint is the sides too, because it's kind of like just sometimes not thought about as much, I guess.
Right. And I think a lot of even really great notable barbecue joints in Texas, when you go and it's like, man, this is delicious. But a lot of times the sides are just an afterthought.
Yeah.
And I think that it's just as important.
So what are some of the sides that you guys kind of
we do a baked potato casserole, which is kind of like a twice baked potato with bacon and cheese and sour cream and butter and all that good stuff. We do a gluten-free cornbread, green chili cheese grits. We do a lot of green chili because we're from New Mexico, and so we grew up eating green chili and not jalapenos. So we have a lot of green chili in our stuff. We do pinto beans and traditional mustard potato salad, slaw.
Green beans. There was a point about a year ago that I think we had like 12 or 13 sides.
Yeah, and I was like, we gotta.
And we took some off the menu.
And some people freaked out, and I was like, listen, guys, we just can't have 1,000 sides.
Yeah, well, and it's hard to scale. I mean, as the restaurant's grown, what the restaurant was built for, we've already doubled that. So when we built the restaurant, it was still very much Mallory and I, hands-on everything. But as we've grown, like obviously you can't do that. You have to hire people and rely on them. And we have a great team, but it's hard when you have that many menu items and expect perfection from all of them. And maybe this cook doesn't even eat coleslaw. Like they don't know what it's supposed to taste like. So we've had, some growing pains whenever it comes to that. And, but we realized we needed to drop some of those. And it was fine. I mean, very little pushback from the customers. And
you have a pretty big dessert menu too. They're like amazing desserts made from scratch.
So figuring out a gluten-free pie crust was the main thing. And once we did that, most pies are gluten-free anyways. It's just the crust. So pecan pie and chocolate pecan pie were our two staples that we started with. And then we added cheesecake. And then from there, a lot of it was a manager that we had at the time that worked with us for years. She was super into baking, so she would add different desserts. And now we have banana pudding with homemade vanilla wafers. We do coconut cream pie, which was Arnis's grandmother's recipe.
Most of our desserts have some kind of backstory that ties
almost
into
everything.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
So like our fresh strawberry pie that we do seasonally. When I was a kid, I remember going to Albuquerque for different events, and we would always eat at Marie Callender's. And they would always have these like beautiful fresh strawberry pies in their pie case. And I hated strawberries at the time, but my sisters and mom, we'd always go home with like a whole pie. And so after my childhood, like I hadn't even seen a fresh strawberry pie in years and years and years. And I thought, well, we have this decent pie crust. Like, why don't we do that? And so we started doing a fresh strawberry pie. And
it's not just strawberry pie.
Right,
like, there's like two. What'd you tell me? It's like 2 pounds.
3 pounds of strawberries.
3 pounds, and it's mounded up. Well, it was funny when we were trying to develop that recipe. Everybody gets really frustrated at Arnis because he is a perfectionist, and you bring something to him, and you're like, "How do you like that?" And he's like, It's kind of a joke around the restaurant, like, what's Arnis going to say? And I'm like, I think it's great. And they're like, Arnis isn't going to think it's great. But it took forever. There was like 100 strawberry pies, and he was like, nope, the glaze isn't right. Nope, not enough strawberries.
But that's what it takes.
Yeah.
You can't settle. You can't settle.
No, I'm not talking smack. I love that about you. But yeah, we finally got this strawberry pie right, and people love it. I mean, and it's beautiful. It's fun to take pictures of. It's just like sort of, it's absurd.
It's like as tall as your face. Like,
it's fun to cut and take pictures of the side, and it's ridiculous, but it's delicious. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, the entire menu are all of our favorite foods. Like that is what it is.
There are a lot of people's favorite foods.
Yeah,
I was just gonna say
we have a few vegetables, and it's fine.
So y'all kind of just adjusted through this whole time, going from the food truck and then into this brick and mortar, and then expanded that. And you've added on a meat market too.
So we opened up a meat market last summer, the week before the 4th of July. And at the time, we had one of our managers who had graduated from the tech meat science school, and he was kind of heading that up. Well, anyway, he left in November, and the meat market had kind of taken off and then plateaued, and then as we transitioned into fall, really kind of dropped off. And I realized not everybody grills every day of the week. And so I was starting to realize too that for people to drive all the way out there just to get a steak, but if they needed other groceries, they were going to have to make an additional stop, somewhere else. I didn't really feel like our location lent itself well for that during that time of year. Around holidays, that's great. So he left. We were getting into Thanksgiving and Christmas, which is very, very busy for us, and we just kind of shut that market down. So it has just been sitting there until this whole thing started. And then we've been able to utilize it some through, especially in the beginning, like the first couple of weeks, everybody went out and bought all the hamburger that they could find. And so there was kind of this manufactured shortage. So we were able to grind some brisket that we had access to and sell hamburger. Within the last couple of weeks, we've had access to some really, really great, like steak subprimals. So like strip loins, ribeyes, that are items that once the restaurant industry kind of shut down, they couldn't move. So there was a surplus of these products that had been shipped in prior to any of the shutdown, that now they needed to move. So we brought in a bunch of those, and we've been doing steak sales on Saturdays the last couple of weeks, and I think people have really appreciated that because it's getting pretty hard to find stuff in the grocery store right now.
Yeah. My dad actually just had his 60th, and so he got some tenderloins from you guys, and we had them the other night, and they were amazing. So we paired them with like Yano has like a Tempranillo that's like bourbon barreled. So we paired it with that. Oh my gosh.
Yum.
So good.
That sounds delicious.
Yeah, it was really good. So what's it been like for you guys with everything going on with COVID and just adjusting kind of like your thought? You've gone from like a line out the door to a line of cars.
So yeah, we shut it down obviously because we had to. And we sort of just built a 3-lane Chick-fil-A style drive-through. So we have 3 teams of 4. Each lane has a meat cutter, a register person, a runner, and a bagger. So essentially only 2 people are touching your food. The runner and the register person don't come in contact with your food. We have radios, so we can radio in the order so they can get started on it before we even finish the transaction. Meat cutter cuts it, the bagger puts the sides, runner grabs the bag and throws condiments and forks and stuff in there and runs it out to your car. It takes about twice as long to do one customer as it does in our restaurant during normal service. So it looks crazy because we have these 3 lanes with all these cars, but we can serve about 70% of what we could do when our restaurant's open. So it's hard. It has been, and I say 70%, so many restaurants are down a lot more than that. We're just thankful that we have this huge parking lot and we're sort of set up to do this, and our crew's like, cool, whatever, let's figure it out. I'll work outside. It's just hard.
Barbecue works really good for it too, because our menu, when we open, everything is cooked. So all we have to do is, you want ribs, here's ribs. You want brisket, here's brisket, and put it in a box. Anything. It's not like a conventional restaurant where you're selecting something from a menu and then they're going to prepare it before they can give it to you.
Right.
So it's really just been pretty smooth, other than the fact that it's really physically exhausting. When we started doing this, there were days that we had like fires out there to keep the cashiers warm.
So I would have a fire pit behind me because it was 20 degrees and I had a fire pit and a computer and gloves and I'm shaking.
And then there's days.
And then there's been 100 degrees.
There's days where we've set up evaporative coolers because it's 103.
The wind.
There's days that a couple of our longtime customers and friends own Kings Highway bus company, and there have been, I think, 3 or 4 days where they've actually had to bring buses up to set up a temporary wind block So, I mean, it's just...
it'll blow our computer screens off the table. I mean, it has been...
one thing after another. Like,
y'all are just resilient. Like, that is so cool how you just adjusted. And
well, I mean, really, the only other option was just to be like, oh, well,
right.
This is hard, and we're going to go home. And
but cry. We can't. Like, we've never had the luxury of doing that. Like, we've never... ever since we started the restaurant, we've been in, like, growth mode. So we're always pouring everything back in. And so we don't have the financial resources to just shut her down and write it out. Like, no plan B forces you to figure out how to get things
Makes you get creative pretty quick.
Yeah.
So anyways, it's exhausting though. I mean, 10 weeks in, we're over it. We're ready to get back to some sort of normal. I know everybody else is, and we talked about this kind of before we started recording, but you know, customers are getting frustrated that they can't dine in, and we're frustrated too. I mean, it stinks, but it's out of our control, and we just can keep cooking and keep serving the way we can and hope that things will get back to normal soon.
Yeah. And I mean, if I want to open, like I am ready to open the dining room and set the trailer up or have some kind of drive-through for people that don't feel comfortable coming in. We absolutely respect that. We understand it completely. But what has been missing for the last 2 months is the energy and the feedback and the magic that you get from the experience of people dining in and people coming out to the pit room and wanting, you know, maybe that's the first time they've had that style of barbecue and they loved it and they want to see how it was made and where it came from. And they come out and they talk to the pit masters and see the fires.
Well, and our long community tables and sitting with strangers and, you know, to reopen and tell people they have to be 6 feet apart. I don't know. He's like, forget it. There's enough people that don't care that are just going to come in. And I believe that and agree with that. But I don't know what the right thing to do is, you know? I don't know. It's tough.
I know you'll definitely figure it out. We'll figure it out together for sure. I mean, y'all got grit and incredible barbecue. We haven't even gotten to it, but Texas Monthly named you number 9 on the most recent top 50 list of barbecue joints.
Yes.
They'll have another list coming out soon, right?
Yeah, it's usually every 4 to 5 years.
It would be
next
2021
year.
And then, you know, this whole thing has like wreaked havoc through the industry. And so I don't know what that'll look like.
Yeah. I think at this point, unless things just seriously bounce back, I don't know that Texas Monthly will do a list like that just because it's like times have been so hard and fantastic places have shut down.
Yeah.
And people are having to adjust their menu. And because of packing plants being shut down and running at such low capacity, all of us barbecue joints may not even have brisket on our menu in 3 weeks. I mean, it's just the reality of it. So I don't know. We'll do chicken wings and fried fish.
Yeah, we'll
figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, whatever we need to do at this point. It does feel much different now than it did 6 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. It's really starting to feel like we're on the downhill side. Our biggest issue right now is the supply chain issues with packing plants running at such a low percentage because their people are sick. So if a plant that normally harvests 6,000 head a day is running at 20%, that's a big hit whenever you multiply that out by 20 or 30 plants.
Yeah.
And people, you know, you'll see local butcher shops and, you know, post things like support your local ranchers and buy beef local. And that is absolutely true. And you should support a local butcher and a local packing shop, but that doesn't help us.
Yeah, you need a lot of
beef.
We
need 150 cows a week, but we only need the briskets off them. You know, that just doesn't really work. So yeah, for your own home personal use, yes, but there's not somebody local that harvests the numbers that we need.
Yeah.
So it's hard.
Like we said, obviously we know that y'all will figure it out.
Figure it out, man.
Awesome. Y'all are great. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So much fun.
Thank you for having us.
We talked a little long. It happens with us.
I mean, that's never a bad thing. So. All right, we'll catch you guys later.
Thank you.
Hub City Spokes is produced by the Lubbock Economic Development Alliance in partnership with Hamel Bros Studios. Special thanks to the DoubleTree by Hilton for hosting us here in downtown Lubbock. For more episodes and to subscribe, go to lubbockeda.org/podcast.